Hello. Hello, and welcome to the Rock Show with Connor Farrell. Let me look at the time. Okay. It is 2:18 p.m. Okay. Let's go. 2:18. Oh, we got a little clock down there. So today's biggest goal is to do 1 hour. And then the next goal is to do it again on Monday. And then the next goal is to do it again on Wednesday. And then on Friday. And to start doing the podcast consistently. That's really the goal. Oh, I've got my setup. I've got everything here. It's all good. It is all good. If I sit here, look at me. Do I look serious? I'm up here and I'm big and I'm tall and I'm well defined by the camera. Okay, so what are we talking about today? My thesis goes a little something like this. Rock and roll is about 12 years behind comedy. A lot of things tie into that. And, I've got a couple written down, but I think rock and roll is going to have a similar trajectory to what stand up comedy did. And I think it's inevitable. I think inherently, here's the real thing is like, how did you make money without the TV network, right? And all this stuff and the big industry in terms of acting. And comedians eventually started figuring out, oh, we can do podcasting, we can build ourselves up, and then we can do shows to interact with our audiences. And then eventually we get so big that the industry takes us in. And so what's funny with that is like, why wouldn't the same thing happen with rock? Right? So that's what I'm doing right now is basically committing to like I'm going to podcast 3 days a week for an hour at a time, and then I want to get it to the point where eventually it'll get to the point where it's something like a Joe Rogan where you're able to take people who are really good and you're able to put them out to the world and introduce the world to them, right? So examples like that are tons of comedians that happened with Joe Rogan. But I would say definitely when it comes to rock music, right? I don't see why that wouldn't happen. Now, here's what's interesting. So we can get into this a little bit. This idea of a monoculture, right? I was listening to Rick Beato, my favorite Rick Beato video, where he's talking about how, it used to be back in the day, there were so many instances where you could bump into the same music as everyone else and everyone, there'd be MTV, like, three news channels, everything was pretty much uniform in what people knew, what people, got reference wise, and what people got exposed to that was different from maybe what they, would like to normally listen to if they were just left to their own, choosing and making their own playlist every time they get in the car. Instead, you have the radio and like you're hearing stuff. And so when you look at that, it's like, if something became a big song, everyone knew this song. But nowadays, because there's so many more people and the marketplace is global rather than national, you know, it now becomes like, if a song is big, you can guarantee only 1 out of 100 people might know it at most, even though it's 10 times as big as it was, you know, or as a traditional big song. So screw loose. Oh, shoot, is that whole thing loose? Do I gotta screw that together? Huh. But anyways, back in the day, if a song was really big, I'll move where I'm sitting for the video experience. If a song was really big, so to speak, like 40 years ago, everyone knew it. And nowadays, a big song is known by way more people, but a lower percent of the people. And so everything is not really, subculture implies that it's obscure or small, but really everything is like there really is no, or there's very little monoculture these days where it's like absolutely everyone knows this name, this person, right? The Beatles, right? Um, and so it seems like there's a big gap in rock acts right now where it's like either you're totally known name, known quantity. Foo Fighters, um, Pearl Jam, right? Those are all from the 90s, and like those are known by everyone, but that's because they happened when there still was one channel, one way you got music, right? One thing you got music through. Same with like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, the Eagles, Rolling Stones. And so it's just kind of funny. It's like, you look at something like Queens of the Stone Age, like they caught, even though they only had one or two or three maybe like hit like super catchy accessible songs that were like, mind-numbingly catchy, really good, but also like super catchy. And the rest of their stuff is a lot more like um artsy and like interesting and like it's more like music for musicians, the same way I like Primus. But like I can tell like, okay, Primus is like, that's a musician's band. Queens of Stone Age is a musician's band. They're not like a band with a ton of like super accessible hit songs. They're super catchy, you know. And but even a band like that, like Queens of the Stone Age, they could catch the tail end of when, radio was still, it wasn't full streaming era. And so, 2000s, 2010s, you could hop on. And, you see like Arctic Monkeys did that, Franz Ferdinand to a smaller extent, the Strokes definitely, but they were just huge to begin with. So you can see lots of bands like, that are still kind of around, but the thing is bands change and there's nothing wrong with that and you don't blame them. But there is kind of a thing where it's like, and it's no one's responsibility, but you're the ones who could start a podcast and put other bands on the map. Like bringing them out on tour in front of you is like good. And it's a good way to, show people off, but really it's like, I don't know, like have them sit down with you on social media and talk about music for a while and have them start doing their own podcast. And so then they learn how to podcast with you. People get introduced to them and they go check them out and check their music out and they go listen to the podcast to stay up to date. It's pretty, it's like a newsletter, right? And so that's kind of where it's like, that seems to me to be obvious. That's either going to happen in rock from the top down by some people, or it's going to have to be grassroots. I mean, have to, it probably will. Um, I'm just saying probably, it's not have to. And like someone like Rick Beato, he's doing a good job of like trying to highlight people. Um, and he's doing a good job. There is almost like a weird thing where the pressure, not the pressures, but the incentives are for people to like be musicians on their own in their room by themselves, which is kind of interesting because that's the only thing that's missing is the communal aspect, right? But the incentives are to not have kind of the communal. And what I mean by that is like, okay, you play one gig to a bunch of people in your area. They've got so many other things they could go be doing. So unless you're already a big established name, they don't really have much of a reason to come out and see you, right? And how do you become a big established name? Well, you have videos and things and content that goes viral, or you have a song that goes viral, or a snippet on TikTok. And like at that point, you're like, well, how is it easier to make that stuff? Is it to get a band together in a room and try and coordinate them and deal with all their flaws, including your own, and get everyone to come together? And then to try and produce and record a complex set of things with lots of moving things with no experience right off the bat? Or is it, I have my guitar and my amp, and I have a microphone hooked up to an interface that goes straight into my laptop, and I have my phone on the tripod, and I just go and play. It's like that's kind of what you've got the incentive for. So, you do have this effect of people getting put on the map, which is good, but then you also need to have the effect of like physical live places for things to develop. And this is where I think sadly it's not, maybe not sadly, but like I think the reality is going to be that music becomes much more like comedy is and was. And it's going to be in the sense that if you want to blow up in the rock scene, if you want to have the physical, like we have a social in-person component playing on stage, which I think is important, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be localized to certain cities. I think a place like New York or LA or Austin, you're going to have to physically be in a ecosystem, physically playing shows for you to get the effect of everyone in the town knows what you are. They like what you're doing. They're into you. They're into your band, right? I think that's only going to happen if you're in, a couple specific places. Because in comedy, it used to be you had to either go to New York or LA. You want to be a comedian for real? Go to New York or LA, right? You can do a bunch of different mics in one night. You can do a bunch of different stuff. And likewise, like in Austin, I think the density of musicians and people, and I think LA, same thing, and New York, but I think Austin might become one now. Nashville's a big example, right? Nashville, Austin. And so it's just interesting. I think this thing that rock music is missing is a place where we all get together and a sense of shared culture via the internet, right? Um, there isn't any like home bases. It doesn't feel like. The closest thing it feels like is honestly like Rick Beato's videos, right? Rick Beato's videos. No, you take Rick Beato's videos, you look at them, and that's kind of, that's that's just where, kind of you can see people in the comments talking and sharing. And it just seems obvious to me that, like, because this is what comedians did, is they would go on each other's podcasts. They'd have their own podcast and they'd build their audience up. Other person would build their audience up. They'd come together, introduce each other. Then their fans would cross over, commingle. And it was a very nice way of getting to be introduced to people, see if you like them. And if you do, you could go self-select into their audience and you could discover, and it kind of coordinates people. This is the interesting reason, like, where it seems like a good idea to have a podcast, because this is the weird thing, and like the social age we're in is like, how do you find people with like interests like you and who get along with you and who have similar values and stuff? When culturally we're so, each house, there's similarities when you live physically in a place, but people have such different lives, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it just means that, like, just whoever you're in person with, there's such a diversity in terms of personality that, like, it's hard to know if you get along. So that's where, ironically, things like going to church or going to synagogue or going to, a mosque, something like that, ends up being valuable, because you're like, well, they probably share much more of my values than other people. But one of the ways I see of finding people and attracting people and having people, be aware of you and become friends with you is by having a podcast, is by having, and going on other people's podcasts and having them on your podcast. And like, not only is it those people that you're talking to who end up becoming your friends or already were your friends, but now you have a more consistent kind of interaction with them, and you have a web built out of other people who like you. It's kind of funny because it's like those people exist, and that exists, but really it's the people watching. Then they know, I stand with you. And in a world where it's like, I don't know, I think this world can be very isolating, the world we're in currently, right? And you can feel like, I don't know, not even like you're alone, but like it's hard to find other people who are like you. And so it seems obvious to me that, like, it would be good to publicize who you are and to put the feelers out and to, like, find other people who you like, who like you, who, care about you, who care about what you care about. And so that's really the mission, the vision of New Rock Dynasty. Started a company called New Rock Dynasty. And it's going to be like a podcast record label type of thing. And, we'll do music. We'll do the podcasts. And we'll, put people together. And because that's the real thing, is like, once you have, all it takes is one successful person to put someone on the map. And so if that person needs to be me and I need to be the famous celebrity first, right? Okay, sure. Celebrity in the sense that, like, we're talking subculturally, right? We're talking about within rock and roll music, I will be like a known quantity. Because then at that point, I can look at the different people, who I think are interesting or I think just need to, like, get a bigger audience or who are amazing. And then you're just having them on, putting them on the map, because that's all it takes is one person puts one person on the map. And if they're really good, then everyone goes and listens to their podcast. And so now instantly, within a year, they're pretty much like a star. Because that's where you kind of get like virality. Like I think Polyphia went viral to an extent, very maybe in 2017 or something. But a lot of these things, it just takes one person introducing them to you or one video going viral, and everyone goes, "Who was that? I like them. I want to see what they have to say. I want to see what they have to do." And so, yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Is like, let's say one person puts me on the map, right? Let's say someone who's got a big podcast or something like that, or a big musician, and let's say I get a big interview, right? And then but then like the person I'm interviewing goes like, no, but I really like your music, and I think people should listen to you, and I'm going to help you get other big guests, and you get some big guests, and you start mixing in people who are really good but unknown, and you kind of do that, and like then things start going. There's lots of ways to do it, but I think eventually you've got rock stars having their own podcasts, but it's 12 years behind. No one's doing it yet. There's no Joe Rogan yet. There's no like big commodity. And that's the thing too, is like, you don't just have to talk about rock and roll, or whatever genre you're into, blues, jazz, indie, because really it comes down to like, look at someone like Joe Rogan. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. There's just the way you're doing it. There's no right and wrong in music, really. I didn't do what I was planning on or intending or what I thought I was going to do. So, yeah, I'm pretty much, I don't know, I think I'm confident in the fact that if I spend the next 10 years doing 3 podcasts a week, something will happen. I'm not saying it's going to fix rock and roll overnight or it's going to, save the world, but something will happen. Think about it. You podcast for, 10 years straight, and, you've got something to say. You're not just talking BS. So let's see this idea of rock culture for rock fans. Yeah, so even if rock fans are only 1 in 10, no one's really got a place where rock culture is happening. And so if you like tell everyone like, hey, Austin, Texas is the city, and you make a big rock club like Rogan did for the Mothership, and then you've got rock and roll going on, and that's like good. And there's a cultural hub where people know rock and roll is going on, and so people are following up. They're wanting to see the podcast. They're wanting to see the photos from the shows. They're wanting to see the fashion. They're wanting to hear the new bands in the area. They're wanting to see who's opening for who, what clubs are playing. All that inside baseball, all that stuff becomes fun, and then those people can go on tour. And then this is kind of the important thing that I don't think rock really does yet, is now that there isn't a record industry putting new people on as other people age out or people you kind of move on from a certain style, right? Like Arctic Monkeys went from very like raw and high energy to like laid back and like reverby, and it's all good. I still like Arctic Monkeys, right? But that's where you're like, well, you guys have an opportunity to bring on like a band that is kind of more in the vein of what you guys did before, and to like promote them. Like, so imagine if like Alex Turner had a podcast, and Matt Helders had a podcast, and they brought on all these different people, all these different younger up and coming bands they really liked, but then also still had on like Josh Homme or Dave Grohl or Mike Kerr from Royal Blood or any of these people. It's like, yeah, I mean, I would watch every single episode of every podcast from all those people, and then they could also throw in bands and introduce people and blow them up, and then I'd go listen to their podcast. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, right? So why don't they do it? Because they already have the money, and they're already doing pretty good. But I think long term, if they want to make a long term play for the next 10 years, it'd be like, oh, start doing the podcast now, promote it to everyone at every single show. Like, let's say Royal Blood did that, right? Let's say Mike Kerr and Ben Thatcher. They promoted, you know, we have a podcast, yada, yada, yada. We're going to talk with, big famous people and then also up and coming bands. Because they had an opener they brought when I went and saw them in Phoenix, Arizona. And the opener actually, I thought I thought they were good. They were good. And, but clearly they were like young, right? And, they maybe had an album or two. And when I got back, I went and like listened to them. Um, but I honestly haven't listened to them since, and it's been maybe like 6 months. And I think that's because like it's like okay, I listened to them, but then there wasn't really any like impetus to like, hey, go listen to my podcast or go like, there was no place where I was regularly getting updated on them, and like I could kind of fall into building a relationship with them, and then building a relationship with me as a fan. Because even if like I still like if I want to see what they're doing later, like it would have been smart to have something where they could catch people who go, I'm interested, but I'm not quite sold yet. Okay, bring me on, this journey of getting to know you guys and where you're from and what you're writing about. And now I'm a fan, and now I want to share this clip with my friends, or I want to share this episode with my friends. And so, that's kind of like something that needs to, not needs to, but something that I think makes sense for rock and roll is that idea of doing the podcast thing. It's cross promoting just like podcasters, monoculture versus a subculture. So I think, rock's mostly in, the way people think of it now is it's been stadium acts. It was things that were, it was a product of monoculture. The reason rock got how it did and changed what styles it did is because, if everyone was listening to hair metal for 10 years, then literally everyone was listening to hair metal for 10 years. And so then when Nirvana comes out, literally no one's been listening to it. So everyone's excited to hear the new thing. But nowadays, it's like everyone's listening to whatever they're listening to. And so it's much harder to do something or to put something out that is different from what everyone else is listening to. Because even if I do something very like moody and whispery and like intimate, a lot of people are already listening to like shoegaze and, indie like pop stuff that's all like, kind of more intimate. So it's like that doesn't catch anyone off guard. I mean, it catches some people off guard, but at a certain point, you're like, if everyone's listening to their own thing, it's hard to, kind of have a shift and have people all jump on that shift. I'm not going to blow into the mic. Sorry about that. Yeah, very low energy right now. I think I had too much caffeine. My stomach's upset. I have a headache. I wanted to not take some allergy medication because I thought it was making me drowsy. It may have been making me drowsy, but now I'm alert and like very kind of stuffed up. Yeah, I did not, I don't really intend to come on here and like be a bummer. Oh, it'll be a bummer. Anyways, let's see. So yeah, I started New Rock Dynasty. So I have this idea of like, here's the real thing. So I'm gonna grow this podcast. This podcast is gonna be really good. It's gonna get to the point where I'm doing it full time and I'm putting, doing artists, having people come on, breaking artists, whatever. And I'm gonna be working with like producers and people who can help me do all the music production stuff because I can play guitar really well and I can write songs, but I don't know how to engineer and record everything really well and mix things. It's not my specialty, and I'm at this stage I'd just rather find people I trust and can work with who I think do a good job. And then you look at whatever the publishing or whatever those rights are, and you do it accordingly. You split things up. Like if it's songwriting credit, like Taylor Swift does sometimes, or if it's the recording, maybe it's like, okay, you get half the songwriting, revenue, and then I get the whole recording revenue because um, that's just the trade we're doing or whatever, right? And then yeah, and so then I'm going to set people up with podcasts, and then eventually going to be selling ads on the podcast, but starting out, it's only going to really be relevant to companies where, if I have a global audience, or, it's companies who are like online, right? Or ship through Amazon, or like can ship to anyone or be used by anyone, or other musicians who want to promote their music and stuff. And so what kind of happens there, it seems to be with me, is like, I think eventually as it gets bigger and bigger, it's only the biggest and biggest brands who are able to spend money. Maybe after like 10 years, only the biggest brands are able to actually like drop the money to do advertising on the rock show, right? And so then at that point, you're like, oh, well, let's just say they pay a couple bucks a month to join New Rock Dynasty, where people get rewards points when they go into their store. Likewise, they can redeem the rewards points at the store. But by paying, whatever it is monthly or yearly, they're in the network. And so then people know that I can go to the stores that are in the network in my area, and it's going to be part of this rock community. It's going to be interconnected with the podcast. It's going to have the records of the bands. I might have like a hangout area. I can buy gear, and I can use my points. And I know like, oh, like in some places it'll probably not be like Guitar Center, or if at some point like we do go, okay, we're gonna partner up, and Guitar Center is also gonna be in the program. We'd still pick like small guitar shops, or like independent, just more unique guitar shops, or hairstylist places, and all that kind of stuff in every city, because you'd still want to keep it unique. But that'd be how like the local things could advertise, is they'd be a part of New Rock Dynasty. Um, so New Rock Dynasty, probably the name for the record label, probably also the name for. And so when I say record label, we'd probably sign artists to do a similar thing like I'm doing, except I think they would own the music, but we would just make, you know, like 50-50 split for the first like 5 years, maybe 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. So the incentive on that is to make sure it's really good music, not only um, but then, the incentive is like, we're building an 8-year relationship here when we sign a deal. It's like if we invest a bunch of money and time into like having you do a podcast and getting guests for you and your podcast. And maybe I don't end up doing the podcast, and like, or in the sense that like we sign people and they're not, we just sign them to put them in contact with producers and get that worked out. And then we have them come on and do an appearance, um, to help launch it, almost like people would go on late night to launch or promote something. And so if they went through us, yeah, I guess they could go through us as an intermediary between the producers. But I mean, we don't need to like make money doing that, really. Like, we don't need to. And then eventually the end goal is you get to something where you're able to do like a WWE or a UFC kind of SNL meets Woodstock thing, where you're able to do a live show. Like, eventually it might be like once, it might start out as like once every 6 months or once a year, where you have a bunch of bands, almost like a 6-hour festival thing. And then you've got comedians and sketches and crazy stuff going on in between. I think that might be too long, though. I might do like a 2-hour show or 3-hour show. But you'd have like, maybe it's 4. Maybe you have each band play. I don't know. Let's say you have 4 bands. I don't know. Maybe you have to do 2 days. I'm trying to think of something that wouldn't be like too tiresome. But you do a crazy big fun show, and you'd have it be a pay-per-view, and it would have sketches, and it'd have comedians coming out and doing stuff and skits, but it'd also have bands playing, and it'd just be like a combo of like Woodstock and SNL, but it'd also be like, WWE or UFC, where it's like pay-per-view. And eventually then you put it out for everyone to see, like maybe 4 months later, like something. There's a point where you put it out. And so that's kind of the thing with New Rock Dynasty Live. And yeah, so I'm a little tired. I'm a little out of it right now. Comedy's 12 years ahead of rock. Yeah. And yeah, who are the sponsors starting out? Who is whatever? It's like, none of that really matters, because it's like step 1 is start podcasting 3 days a week for an hour at a time and upload it every time. Feel good that you did the podcast, even if you didn't feel good while doing the podcast. Ooh, there we go. See, we're at half an hour. Like another half an hour to do. Let's think, what am I going to talk about? Slouched back in my chair with my microphone. It cut out for that word because I have the gain too low for it to catch all of the words that I'm saying all the time. I'll probably make TikToks explaining what my goal is and what I'm doing and what New Rock Dynasty is and the mission and waving the flag to all the rockers. Let's see what they rate. The call to action is message me, get on to record Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at 10 a.m. With me on Riverside.fm where I'm recording, and get all your friends listening weekly. The faster you do, the faster we bring back rock. So that's also interesting too, is like, if you see this and you send it to a friend and you get them listening and you tell them to keep doing that with all their other friends and you're a musician or something, if you're able to blow this up within a year, you know what I mean? And like get people listening. And when I say blow up, I mean like 2,000 listens per episode, which is not insane. Um, but if we can get this thing to be like just medium level successful, to go from medium to like really big, and to the point where like we can just have people on every once in a while, and then they become like, they have big podcasts too, and now there's a whole giant rock scene of like big podcasters with bands that are really cool and producers who are really cool, and then they end up collaborating with like the biggest artists in the world, and then it's like super cool and great and fun. So like that can happen, and it will happen. It's just a matter of how quickly. So it's like the quicker, people share this and you share this and like send it to your friends and you send it to whoever, the quicker you do that, the quicker you send it to other people, the quicker this platform's around and quicker we live in this world where rock has caught up. So it's, how does rock and roll catch up to comedy? It's by sharing and following and listening to The Rock Show with Connor Farrell. Of course, it's listening to The Rock Show with Connor Farrell. It's listening and doing that. I've got some electrical engineering homework to do later, but that's good. I won't do it later. I'll do it later. Let's see. Okay, making TikToks, talking about the mission, the podcast that broke the camel's back. Now people go, country is the new rock. What do we think about that? Is country the new rock? In the sense that, I think the country people, they go on podcasts, but that's because, country, I think, maybe has Nashville. They have a physical place where it's like, this is the place for country. I don't know if that's the difference, the thing that's made country like a relevant big thing compared to rock, is that country has a city, rock does not. And so that's where it's like, do you make Austin rock and roll central? Yeah. I'm thinking maybe. I'm thinking definitely maybe. Definitely maybe, definitely. Because I think an important element is things being like relatively affordable. And things are just expensive in New York and LA and London and all these other places. And then at that point, you're like, okay, well, things, you want it to be some sort of other cultural hub. And this is something Joe Rogan kind of mentioned about LA. He was saying the magic of LA in like the 90s, the early 2000s, or even the 80s, is that you'd have rock stars and comedians and musicians all, or rock stars, comedians, and actors all hanging out. You'd have the actors, you'd have like, like Johnny Depp or whoever hanging out with a comedian, hanging out with like Alice Cooper, right? So you'd have all these different people who are all hanging out, and so the art would inspire the other artists. The quickest way to be, inspiring is to be inspired. The quickest, or what do they say? The quickest way to be entertaining is to be entertained. To be entertained, is very easy to be entertaining. Ooh, I'm very entertained right now. I'm looking at myself on the screen. It's very entertaining. Very entertaining. And, so you think about that. There you go. You like that noise? Like that noise? I can do that noise. Looking at the clock. It's a good idea to look at the clock. And so I think it's interesting, that mix of like, you have rock stars, you have musicians, you've got comedians, you've got everyone together doing stuff in the same place. It's like, it's impossible not to be entertained when you're doing that, and that's your setup. And so, so country's got a city, Nashville, but why is having a city important? Because you're able to translate the online into real life and back into online. It's able to build and grow. And then when you're able to like meet people and network, it does the same thing too. And then if you're in a place where there's other people who are notable and who can recommend you to other people who are notable, before you know it, this is my hypothesis. Let's say I go to a city like Austin and I start playing the rock scene and I become big in Austin, right? And Black Licorice, my band, becomes very big in Austin, right? Well, there's a lot of influential people in Austin. If I'm, famous to a certain extent as like big rock band, oh, that's a really good rock band from that city. It's like the people in that city, to them, were famous. And so you're like, okay, but some of those people, you're either medium or like, you know, full blown famous to lots of people everywhere. And so you're like, okay, well, let me get any of these people, now that we're like famous and we're cool and everyone knows we're good and like really likes coming to our shows, you're like, okay, well, let's invite the people who are famous with, big podcasts or whatever to our shows and be like, hey, thank you for coming. Yeah, I hope you like it. Do you want to come on our podcast? If they like the music, or be like, because you don't want to ask to come on someone's podcast, but you can invite them on your podcast. You don't want to be like, hey man, I want to be on your podcast. It's like, no, 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 no. But no, like, if let's say Joe Rogan was like, Connor, I really love what you're doing. I believe in the rock show. I believe in the new Rock Dynasty. I think the whole thing's a great idea. I think you're right. Rock and roll is about 12 years behind. Maybe it's 15. Maybe it's 18. But what if we kickstarted it? What if we really, you know, at that point, you're like, okay, well, you want to come on our podcast, right? Um, and yeah. And if that's the case, it's like good, 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 and that's what we do. But once again, yeah, it's like if we could get okay, let's say we take I don't know, let's say like Tony Hinchcliffe. You'd be like, Tony, you like rock and roll, you like this band, we're famous here, and come to our show if you'd like to, right? Comes to the show, you're like, okay, you like us, would you like to come on our podcast, right? And then you can be like, okay, talk about music, talk about what bands you like, talk about, and we can, recommend other musicians, other things, and get them going. The funny thing is I don't even have to be the first one to pop. I don't have to be the first rock star, first rock and roll podcaster, the rockcaster. I don't have to be the first one, right? Because all it takes is one of us popping off, and then you just invite the other people on. And if the other people are entertaining and people like their music and like hearing from them at least, well then, boom, instantly. Everyone else now within a couple months is big. And everyone else is there to bring everyone up and support everyone up. It's the same exact thing that happened with comedy. It's like bands aren't in competition with each other like at all. Like at all. If you're like a real like band, or even if you're a singer songwriter and you play like acoustic guitar and like or piano and you sing, right? We're not in competition with each other. None of us are. Like there's so many people out there and there's so much music, and actually like there's so many bands people like listening to, and it's like as all these bands get old and die, it's like we're gonna have to replace them. We're gonna have to replace them. I used to have this idea that like, if you're a band like the Rolling Stones, it's like what are you gonna do when you stop touring? Right? What's gonna happen to music, right? And so it's just kinda like, what if Rolling Stones trained a Rolling Stones 2? And what if they said, okay, once we're done touring, like, you know, you guys can go and tour the music, right? And then they could also have their own side projects and see if those split off in successful bands. But like, I feel like people don't really like think about what's this brand of the band and the institution going to be like after I'm not involved with it, right? And so I don't know. It's interesting. Like some bands, do they feel like a franchise, like Kiss? I don't know. It's like they spent most of the '80s with just two guys from the original lineup, and so you're just kind of like, is it the same band? Is it not? So there's interesting questions there of like, should bands, kind of train their replacements? But I would definitely say like, if like Dave Grohl did a podcast once a week and just did it, even if it's 30-minute podcast once a week, right? And he just had a guest on. I mean, if he brings on a band, that band is made as long as they're good, but they probably are, right? Um, and there's lots of good musicians out there, so it's like not hard to find. And so if he just brings on one person who's good, talks to them for a while, like that person's whole career is made. Then do 2 more episodes with famous people, then do another with someone who's unknown, and it's like that's what, like 1/3 of the weeks of the year. So 13 times 4 is 52. Okay, what's 52 divided by 3? Ooh, I don't want to think about that. 8 point. Man, we're really 17 times 3 is 52. Wait a minute. Let's go. Okay, 17 plus 17. We're totally not right. I said 52. 20 times 3 is 60. Minus 8, which is 2 2/3 threes. So that gives us 17 1/3. Okay, so let's say Dave Grohl did a podcast every week of the year. 2 weeks he would have famous people. 1 week he would have someone who's unknown. That would be about 17 people a year who get broken, like who break out, and if they have podcasts and they start doing it regularly, and then let's say he has a couple repeats every year. After 2, 3, 4, 5 years, those people are actually properly established now by coming on, once every year or two, with Dave Grohl. And especially if all those bands start playing together and they all move to, I don't know, Austin, Texas, and they start playing together. And then, there ends up being a whole scene there and they all start podcasting together. And then let's say another rock star has a podcast, right? Like Nikki Sixx or Tommy Lee or someone has a podcast, right? And then they have some of these people on. And now there's going to be a lot of rock podcasters having these people on. And then let's say the comedians and the rock stars cross over, right? And the rock stars are having comedians on and comedians are having rock stars on. And it's like, oh, look at that. What happens there? And so that's kind of where I see, like, it's really interesting because it's like all it takes is one straw to break the camel's. Oh, I'm going to turn my gain up. All it takes is one straw to break the camel's back. All it takes is one person to choose to do a podcast consistently, to consistently have the famous people on, and to consistently have the unknown people on, and to get them to commit to doing the podcasts and to get them to collaborate on tracks, to get them to play together, to get them to, localize and join forces. I think there needs to be a hub. I think rock and roll needs to have a center. There needs to be a heartland. There needs to be a place that, deep in the heart of every rocker they want to go. It used to be maybe CBGB's New York and the whiskey and, on Sunset. And, a lot of those places aren't there anymore. I mean, the whiskey's still there, but, you've got the opportunity cost is literally every other thing you could do in existence is on your phone, right? Anything you want that's entertaining, anything romantic, anything sensual, anything, educational, anything, I don't know, culinary, anything involving food. One sec. Got a yawn. A little tired today. Hope the gain's up high enough because last podcast I kept like I would listen back to the audio and I'd be like, we didn't get that, did we? We didn't really get that. And yeah, that's the thing. I think if you get all the rock stars to start podcasting, I mean, the real quick, like the button to make it go quick, the fastest is someone who's already famous, right? You get Dave Grohl, you get Jack White, pick anyone. You get Eddie Vedder. You get any rock star. preferably current. Like they're currently doing tours and shows and things like that. You get anyone. You get Julian Casablanca from the Strokes. You get Albert Hammond Jr. You get any of those guys. You get Matt Helders from Arctic Monkeys. You get any of these people to do a podcast consistently and have unfamous people mostly, right? Like mostly, right? Maybe it's 3-1 or 2-1 or 4-1. But you mostly have these famous people on, and then you bring on the small little itty bitties. And the itty bitties, we go and we pitter patter around. No, but literally, if they did something like that and they committed to that, it's like, I don't know, it's just interesting. You're kind of like, how do you make sure rock and roll's around for your kids? And it's like, I think that'd be the thing. Is like, that's the reason they'd care. Is like, if I want rock to be around for my kids and I want them to grow up with rock, and I don't want people to feel like, oh, because we're changing sounds and we're less rock and roll, you know, you don't want them to be upset with you because you're like, you're one of the last two rock bands in existence. How dare you abandon us, right? Because that's the kind of way it can feel as a fan. Is you're like, you can have that impulse where you're like, Arctic Monkeys, what are you? You're one of like the two people who do it anymore. You're like one of the two people who are culturally relevant, and now you're not a rock band. You're like, guys, we have no one. I mean, you still have like Foo Fighters, but like, I don't, I don't know the chorus to any of the new Foo Fighters, and I like Foo Fighters. I'm not a Foo Fighters hater at all. I'm also not. I'm not like a super big fan, but like even bands I really do like, I don't always check out their new stuff all the time. It's because you don't hear from them. That's the thing too. It's like if they had a podcast, they had something like the Black Keys. They went on Rogan when their new album came out, but before then they were doing all these little clips on their Instagram and Twitter, and they're doing all these parody things, and these things were really funny, and like it genuinely was like, oh, I can't wait for the album to come out, or they have a new album coming out, I want to check it out. And so then I did. And then, I found, what do I like on the album, right? You find all those things because, you know, because they're actually like talking and posting and engaging. It's not because you don't like the artist. You do like the artist. It's not because you think, oh, they've gotten bad. It's because there's so much going on now. Unless you actually build a relationship with me and you talk to me, a couple times a week, or we talk every week and like I see you all the time and I'm thinking about you and like, oh my God. No, but unless you're top of mind like that, I'm not going to check your stuff out. Right. And so it's kind of funny to think about that when it comes to like comedians. They know it's like when they want to be talking to you once or twice a week so that you're top of mind passively speaking, right? Because then if they come to your town and it goes, oh, at the Improv in Tempe, Arizona, there's uh, Dan Soder, who loves Queens of Stone Age, by the way. Dan, we need to do a podcast together. Actually, Dan Soder, if you'd like to bring back rock. Dan Soder, if you'd like to bring back rock, I know you went to U of A in Tucson, Arizona. Now, if you'd like to help bring back rock and roll, I'm seeing you, little guy. You're right there. You're right there. I know where you live. I don't know where you live, but I know you're right in there. Anyways, so Danny Sodes, if you're there, if you're listening, one of four people, one of in Germany, four people. Danny Sodes, if you're listening, please, please come on the Rock Show. Have me on Soder. I'm gonna beg to be on every podcast. I'm gonna beg because I need this. No, I don't. But it's just fun to joke around. Just having goofs here. Anyways, let's see. I'm trying to see if I can get the camera to focus on my finger. It was you. That's pretty funny. I like having to do that. Close up on the finger pointing at you. It was you. You. Accusatory finger IRL. No, but Danny Sodes, if you want to hop on the Rock Show and blow this up, we will gladly take it. Because if you blow this up, we'll bring, we'll make it so there's an environment for new rock bands to happen, and we'll blow up our podcast, we'll blow up their podcasts, and we'll hopefully, real talk is like if you get plugged in with one of the big bands and you have them like help you make songs and record and put you in contact with engineers and people, And that's kind of the thing is like I guess everyone really I don't know. It's just interesting. Yeah, but I guess yeah. So Daniel, if you're listening, if you're out there, Dan Soder, from formerly of the Bonfire, presently of Soder, a solo podcast. Uh, no, if like someone like you, Dan Soder, are listening, and you just have me on, or you, I don't know, come on here, right? Like, and then you have like someone like Joe List or Ari Shafir, other comedians who like, like Elvis Costello, and I know Ari likes like television and LCD sound system, a little more like hipster. Even Big J, talk about Corn, talk about Limp Bizkit, talk about Mudvayne, talk about, it's like if you have any of these comedians, come on, who like rock and roll, it's like, oh, no brainer. Because here's the real pitch. It's like if you want to bring back rock and you want there to be new rock bands and you want, there to be a new rock dynasty, as one might put it, uh, come on the podcast. It's that simple. You come on the podcast, you share the clips, you say, everyone go check this out. And the next two podcasts you do, you talk about it and you tell the other comedians, like, you do realize if you go on and we go on, we bring back rock. It's that simple. We flip a switch. Rock's back. Like 3 months tops. The podcast is doing well. You know, this guy's getting other big guests on because he is a big guest. Now he's getting sponsors. Now, let's say Sheath Underwear, who sponsored originally the Gas Digital Network, and now they're freaking sponsoring the UFC. It's like you get them on board. Then it's like, okay, get some maybe Liquid Death. You get a couple other things that are more like the super rock audience. But then at that point, you can also resurrect, rock stores, guitar stores, all these different things, rock community. You'd have the rock hairdresser, you'd have the rock pub, you'd have the rock place where you get your new rock dynasty, you get your rewards points, and you could redeem them and you can use them in the other places. And so that would build a local community of rock pretty much in like every city in America. Um, Starting out, and then once we have that figured out, then you can move international. But it's like seriously, it would literally bring back rock in a literal sense. It would bring back rock culture. It would make a new thing for the 21st century. It's not even bringing about something back. It's making something even better, right? And then that enables you to have these like new bands and to like eventually. I mean, here's the real goal: is do the exact same thing Rogan did. Exact same thing. It's to have a rock venue like in a place like Austin or someplace that's a home base, right? And then to have it so bands can come up and do open mic nights and they can go and get recordings from the show that can be mixed by the guy who's doing sound, and then they can put it out as like live records and stuff every time they play the club, even on a friggin' open mic night. Or and you bring in bigger bands, you'd have someone, you'd be like, yo, like Ozzy, do you want to do a guest spot? Right? Like, I know it sounds crazy, like that's the comedy, lingo, but it's like you'd have like these big people come in, you'd be like, Dave Grohl, do you want to just sing a song? You can do it with Black Licorice, or let's pick another band that's like, a new and up and coming. And you'd have them come in and work with someone who's semi, you know, established newer artist, right? And you'd have them work with them, and it's like, boom, boom, it's I always thought about if I started doing stand-up comedy, it's like, well, what if I lose my voice? And I was like, wait a minute. I'd walk on stage, I'd be like, hi. i would just I would try and like just get everyone to flinch. I would just juke them out. I would just do weird stuff like that. I'd start tapping my fingers and scratching the inside of my nostril. So, little rockers, here we are, Gen Z rock and roll. That's the name of the game, baby. I mean, look at like Casey Rockets. Come on, let's get Casey Rockets on. Never made it as a wild man. Couldn't cut it as a Nickelback. Nickelback reference. It's a reference to Nickelback. You're welcome. And yeah, but that's crazy, right? So the end goal is to have a club, is to do the new Rock Dynasty live show, right? Maybe you do it on the tour on the road, eventually similar to what Bert Kreischer has with his Fully Loaded tour, where he brings like 6, 7 comedians, and then they had Jelly Roll coming out and like playing as well. And so you've got these like giant things where you can do these giant events, these things. It feels like, holy cow, like there is a culture. And especially if you build out an infrastructure, because there already are these different nodes. There are record stores. There are already, guitar shops in every city. It's just a matter of bringing them all together, formally through like, rewards points or something, and like having a network, and then like the local whatever venues are there that are a part of the network too, where you get points, and whatever bands like are playing, you just have their flyers up at those different shops there. But no, you could have like a little like magazine that all the shops have, or maybe it's just something like a QR code you scan, or you get an update, and each week it'll be like breakdown of like people who we think are cool. Maybe there's a little editorial board of like who was on podcasts this week and who we talked about. And maybe you get a newsletter that like physically you just print out at the store, and you're like, go check this band out, go check this band out. Maybe there's one band a week where like that's the band this week. Go check out this song they did. And maybe we push that on every podcast, right? We're like, just go check it out, go check it out. It's you could even be like, it's more of a Shania Twain thing. I don't even know what Shania Twain sounds like, but you can be, or Sheryl Crow. I don't even know what Sheryl Crow sounds like, but you can be like, it's this week it's a Sheryl Crow type thing. Next week it's going to be like a, I don't know, like Dio, just something different. And, you just make that be the thing. And then eventually you could do a podcast network if you'd like, right? So you kind of combine a podcast network and a record label. So I'm assuming everyone here knows what I'm talking about, which is nice. I'm not talking to my grandmother, having to explain what a podcast network is. Love my grandmother. No shade. But yeah, if you're talking about having I'm bouncing my leg. And I realize I just put my hand on it. And so it's like bouncing my leg up and down like someone who had too much caffeine and they didn't take their allergy medication. Now they have a headache. But they're going to get to learn about circuits. They're going to get to pursue electrical engineering. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it nice? Yeah, and so worst case scenario, podcast grows. Good. We get Dan Soder on and it goes amazing. No, that's really good. That's a really good case scenario. And then Dan's like, Joe List, come on. Big J Okerson, come on. You get all the people who like music, who are big famous comedians, who are like big and famous, who like music, and you get them to come on. But dude, imagine. I'm just going to do this every episode. I'm going to be like, guys, at Dan Soder on Instagram, on Twitter, get him on. Say, Soder, do the rock show. Everyone tweet at Soder. Go, do the rock show. At Dan. I don't know what his ad is at, but at Dan. And you go, at Dom. And you go, Dom. And you say, Dan Soder, please, come on the rock show with Conor Farrell. Please, we want rock and roll back. Please come on the rock show. Oh my God. And so, and you would, you basically do that. And you'd be like, please come on. Now, the worst case scenario, I'd just be a intelligent electrical engineer. Keep doing the podcast, because eventually, after like 10 years of doing this, it's going to blow up, And I'm going to do the engineering stuff, because I'm a nerd. You guys don't know, but like, I'm sitting at my desk, from my room from when I was in high school. It's just funny because I had a textbook, or it's not here anymore, but it was called Musemathics from MIT, and there was 2 volumes, and it was about like sound waves and acoustics and how you hear things and outside. And it talked about the different fibers in your ears and hearing loss and how to prevent it and all this crazy stuff. And so it's just really funny because you're sitting there like, that's the kind of stuff I like. That's the kind of stuff I'm learning about. But no, I'm just, I'm in school right now. And, the podcast will either blow up while I'm in school or after I'm out of school and when I'm working. Because either way, you don't stop the rock. You don't stop the rock. And I'm not talking about Dwayne Johnson. That's very funny of you. I'm not talking about Dwayne Johnson when I say you don't stop the rock. Yeah, but that's good. So honestly, that's the thing, is like all it takes is like Dan Soder, Big J Okerson, or Joe List, or Ari Shaffir, or someone who's a famous comedian to come on the rock show and to help us get other guests and bands and things of the sort. And then, you get the ball rolling and you get them sharing. Like, let's say, you know, all these different people started sharing fun times and tell it to me and posting on their Instagram like every day. And they post one clip from the Rock show every day. It's like, I think it would take off. Especially if they have me on a podcast. It's like, that's how, I mean, if you really want to blow this up, Dan, I know you're listening. If you really want to blow this up, you have me come on the podcast. You have me go on, like, I don't know, you only have your podcast. But I forget does List have a solo podcast? I don't know. I really don't remember. I know he has. He must. I know he's on the regs, and I think he has one with Mark Normand. Very confused right now. But basically, if one of these people, any of these people, start hopping on the podcast like regularly, or let's say you get a 3-person show, you get Big J, you get Soder, you get me, you're like, and I'm not saying because I'm the most entertaining person or I'm not annoying. I can't be annoying. That's impossible. But I can do it, and I will do it. I will bring back rock. I will bring rock culture. I will facilitate all of this. I will help people. Because that's the thing too. It's like, as much as it is nice to like change people's lives and make them into successful musicians, it's important that other people grow up with rock music like I did. And so the reason you need to break these bands and you need to make a viable path forward and show people it can be done, and they just have to do it. And the reason to do that is because if you show people it can be done, then they'll do it. You help people do it, and then they become rock stars. They build a following. They build an audience, and there's all the beautiful things that they can do. Because I can only reach who I can reach. And the people who are going to like me or the way I say things, those are only going to be the people who like me and the way I say things, right? But if I can inspire, even like 5 other people to go and like do their own podcast and band, and those people affect everyone else, it's like, it's worth it. Because I don't want to live in a world without rock. It's that simple. I like rocking and I love rock music. And, I guess maybe in a certain sense, I do, feel like you owe it to someone like Queens of the Stone Age, or like a band you do like, right? Who is still kicking. Like, you're like, I owe it to them to start bringing out a next wave so they don't feel bad if they want to retire like 30 years from now or whenever they're like much older. It's like, I want there to be a thriving rock scene so they don't feel like, there's a gap left. It's like, no. Rock and roll's doing good. You guys are great and you've been doing great stuff. But like, rock doesn't end because you retire. And it kind of feels like that way a little bit now. It's like, it feels like rock kind of ends. It feels like rock has stunted in a certain extent. I don't know if I've heard a new person who I'm interested in or who I like. And how would I find out about them? How would I? I'd go on TikTok, but all you see on TikTok is TikTokers. Does that make sense? Like, think about it. I like the Aaron Paulson guy who does the drum stuff. Get Aaron Paulson on, that'd be great. But I think Aaron should do his own podcast because I would listen to that. Listen to that in a heartbeat. And he has other people on who do the TikTok stuff and do the rock stuff and do whatever. Right? It's like, that's where it starts. It seems like rock hasn't caught on to the podcast thing. Or maybe it's so underground right now that I haven't found anyone. Which could be true. And so I guess if I'm leading the charge or otherwise, it doesn't really matter because still tapping my foot, by the way. Still tapping my foot. Plosives on the microphone. Plosives. Yeah. So we're gonna bring back rock. It keeps. We're going to make rock happen. Rock will happen. There'll be a rock culture. Right now, it feels like the big, famous, established people and no one else. That's really what it feels like. Um, but there's infinite, talented, great musicians out there. There's lots of good engineers and recording people, and that's the thing is your song only sounds as good as your song sounds, right? Your recording is only as good as your recording, and that doesn't mean you need to have a crazy, you know, elaborate thing, but it does mean it needs to sound good. People need to like recognize it as music, not amateur. You know what I mean? They need to go, oh, this sounds good, not, this sounds like a demo, like aggressively like a demo, you know? And so, if we can put people with producers who know how to like make things sound good, even if that's not even a business thing, it's literally just an act of like getting the producers and the artists to do podcasts and then getting them to go and like onto this podcast and put them in contact with each other. So they start podcasting together and hanging out together. It's like, that's what's good. That's what's good. You want people working together, making rock music, even if it ends up being mostly like one guy in a room who writes stuff and one guy in a room who produces stuff, and they come together over the internet. Like, that's good. It's a good starting place. And then they start playing shows. Or one of them, even if you're playing shows at backing track at first, it's like, that is something. But once you've, got something going, you can get a band together, to play it live. It doesn't need to be perfect. It never will be. It's the funny thing, Part of me was like, do I podcast right now? I don't feel good. Like I feel out of it, right? And I thought it just needs to get done. It just needs to get done. Because it's not just about me. It's about rock. It's about the people of rock, my people. It feels very hard. Don't have a lot of them. Hard to find them. And when you do, you want to. You want to, keep it sacred. Hold them close. You want to make sure they know they're appreciated. And, well, they are. That's the thing, I hate, well, I don't hate, but you know, you're like, oh, this is corny. You're getting corny. It's like, it's how I feel. It's important to me. It's real. It's what you want. That's all I got. So that's what you're getting. I love rock. I love rock people. And, you know, the state of rock breaks my heart. Breaks my heart for all the rock people out there without their community, without their people, without a home, without. But we're all there. We're right here. We just need to come together. We just need to assemble. And I think that will. Because if I'm not the one who has the podcast, someone else will. But I am going to be the one who has the podcast. One of the podcasts. But I will be someone with a podcast. I will be, Rock Rogan 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Because it doesn't matter how bad I feel. I keep doing this. I will always do this. I ain't never going to stop. I ain't never going to stop. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm never going to stop. It's, kind of comforting, but also like, it just is what it is. This is what I'm going to do because this is what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter if I feel helpless. It doesn't matter if it feels like, despair. Right? Because here's the thing is, I know this is the year I formed New Rock Dynasty. That's what 2024 is. It's the year of the dragon. That's one of our logos. Little dragon. Little dragon. Anyways, no, but that's what the year is. It's 2024. It's the year of New Rock Dynasty. It's the year it was founded. That's going to be the thing in the textbook. It's going to be like, that's the thing that brought about the podcast rock and roll thing. That's going to be the thing that brought rock back into the, age of rock, in the same way comedy is huge right now. And I think, largely it was almost like there was comedies that were movies, and then there was comedians which were like kind of a small like thing, and now they have movies and you have comedy specials and comedians and podcasts, and it's kind of like totally like just taken one spot over. And so I don't think it's a fad, is what I'm saying, with the podcasts and the comedians and all that stuff. I think it's the new dynamic until AI comes along. But here's the thing too: is like AI comes along, it's like AI wouldn't make this. AI wouldn't be uncomfortable with the sound of their voice, or the way they talk, or how they feel, or whatever. Like, there's no existential, like, I don't know. There's none of that. AI is not doing that, and people don't come on because they want a bummer fest. People don't want that, and I don't want to do that. But still, I'm just like, at a certain point, you're like, if you're a little bummed out, that's gonna be what comes across. But it's better that you do it than you don't do it at all. And that's the thing too, is also, I'm always gonna do this. I'm never not gonna do it. Because that's the thing. I never regret have done it. This one's stupid, but sometimes, maybe you guys have this when you were a kid, but I would be like, I'd be dirty and I'd want to shower, but I wouldn't want to like get in the shower because I would stop having fun, stop doing what I'm doing, stop everything to like go and take a shower. But the instant I'm in the shower, I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I love taking a shower, right? And then after, I'm so happy I showered. I am so happy I took a shower. Like, there's nothing better than having took a shower. And so it's funny, because that's, kind of how I feel about podcasts. Nothing feels better than I did a podcast. It's like, oh, we did a podcast. Like, oh, that's pretty good. Hear my jaw clicking. You can hear my jaw clicking. Anyways, I'm thinking about moving to Austin around October. If you guys have any recommendations for places to go check out, clubs, things, social places, if you want to be friends there, right? If you've got a sister or a girlfriend with a girlfriend, or if your girlfriend has any single friends, we'll take girlfriend applications, we'll take everything. And that's the thing too, is like, at the end of the day, it's like, what's the most flattering thing to put out of yourself? Is you being all like emotional and sincere on the internet? Wow, that'll really get chicks going, right? Right? It's like, no, but that's the thing. At the end of the day, is like, am I living my life for me, or am I living my life to be attractive? Really, I'm not living my life to be attractive. I'm living my life for me. I'm living my life for what's meaningful to me. And then over time, you want, let's say you've got status, right? You're successful, you're like celebrity in the rock world, you're a celebrity in whatever city you're in, or you're some gradient along that. Let's just say you have 10,000 followers on Instagram, 12,000, which isn't even like crazy anymore. And now most people fake things everywhere. But, let's say you are playing a 500-person venue totally sold out. And some girls in the audience see that and they go, oh my God. And like, they don't listen to your podcast, but they see you're the guy playing to the 500-person crowd. There's some sense of status that you're leading a group of 500 people and yada, yada, yada. And then some people are just like, I think you're physically attractive. I'm in good shape. Um, I might want to like get to a lower body fat percentage so you can be like, look at my abs, like, oh, like chiseled jawline. And I can do that if I lose like probably like 8 pounds of fat. And so at that point, it's like it's not hard for like it's not unlikely if I do that and I get like my hair's getting a little long. If I get a haircut, I put on a black T-shirt that's like tight as hell, and I'm like totally like shredded, and I'm pretty jacked. It's like take off the glasses too. I gotta wax my unibrow. It's like, but like stuff like that. And let's say I have clear skin because I've been like doing my acne stuff regularly. You know, yeah. If I've got all that going, and then I know like I've been on plenty of dates, right? I know how to like do a date. Like okay, you don't want to like just talk a lot and turn someone away, and you know how to be attractive. You know how to be romantic, and you know how to do all those things, right? Um, all this is to say, not doing this to get girls. Pretty clearly, this isn't the podcast you would make if you're trying to get girls. I'm gonna stick my neck out, be total turkey. You'd be like, oh, and like, look at my Spider-Man thing in the back. Look at my Harvard thing on the left, right? You wouldn't be like, look at those cables just hanging there, right? Isn't this crazy? Isn't this subject matter so riveting? Don't you like? But here's the thing: I'm gonna bring back rock. So what does it matter? What does it matter what you think? Doesn't matter what you think. Can you smell what the rock is cooking? Because think about it. You can't. You can't. You never will. I always will. I am what the rock is cooking, and you don't know that, but you do now. So keep that, tucked away, like a little satchel, little pouch for you. I hope you like your little pouch. Ew. So yeah. Yeah, it feels good. It's like it's going. It's weird because it is like Thanos, right? It is inevitable. It's inevitable. I'm gonna bring back Rock. I'm gonna do this whole thing. I'm surprised no one else is doing this or had thought to do this. And I'm also kind of confused that like none of the well, I guess I get why. I get why none of the existing rock bands or the comedians who are currently big. I get why none of them have thought to do this, right? Um, because they're unaware. The comedians, at least, they're unaware. Like someone like Bert Kreischer, um, or Theo Vaughn, like they're unaware. Now, would they have on someone like I don't know, like this Billy Strings kid? I haven't heard his stuff yet, but he's supposed to be like incredibly good, like more maybe like country bluegrass. And I love me whenever I don't even know that much stuff yet. I'm like, every once in a while I try and start listening to like Jerry Reed, and I really like that. And heard some Chet Atkins stuff. Like, I like me some sort of like country here and there, and but yeah, but no, like, but that guy's already like popped off, right? It's like having Tim Henson or Polyphia on. It's like, oh, you're already famous. So it's like, there's a reason, and it makes sense where you would like see them, you'd be like, holy cow, I want to have them on, invite them on. Versus like you're sitting there and you think up like, because that's the thing is like, and this is the tendency as an artist, I think, as a rock musician, you go, what's next for me? what's next for my sound? How am I to reinvent myself? The way I approach songwriting, the way I approach everything. Like, how do I feel about this? How does this reflect my past, my present, my future? Do I still care about the songs I wrote all the way back then? What feels real to me? That kind of stuff is what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about, like, who's going to do what I was doing? Also, what about the existential problem of the whole record industry collapsing? And they didn't figure out, like, oh, guess what you could do? You could find people who are talented, the same thing you always did. Instead of selling CDs, you could do a podcast and you could sell all of the advertising. You can make advertising money off it. Wait, you can make advertising money off it? Yes, you can make advertising money off it. You even do a podcast. It's that simple. You're like, well, what if they're a good musician and a good artist? They have a bad personality or they can't podcast well. You're like, well, then you don't sign those ones. Shocker. Or you pair them up together in a cool combo where they always have fun stuff to say. And you give them some topics to talk about every time. And or you just always book a good guest for them, right? Like this seems fairly obvious because that's like, look at Two Bears, One Cave, Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. Tom Segura. Segura. I'm trying to do te, like they do in España. España. In Spain, they go th instead of s. And so España. España. I think not Bert. I think Tom is from Mexico or oh my god, no. Is he Panamanian? He's somewhere from Latin America, not South America, but like I think somewhere in Latin America. Anyways, even though the Spanish are the ones who do the th sound, and it is funny too because he does look like fairer skin, like he might be like Spanish rather than like Latin, which is just kind of funny. So I like see him and I'm like, oh, you're speaking España. Like you're that speaking. Like I instantly just go there, even though that's not probably his accent he has in Spanish. And I don't know enough Spanish to know any of the other accents. I'm learning though. I'm learning. I'm beating the Duolingo bird. I'm beating him every single time. I'm learning Spanish. Don't worry. That's the funny thing too. In like 2 years, I'm gonna know Spanish. Like I need to get used to that. Like in 2 years, it doesn't matter if the podcast is like huge and I'm a big successful rock star and I'm playing around the world and I'm podcasting and I'm doing this full time. Or even if I'm medium successful, but like I'm like full time. Like let's say the podcast has 5,000 listens per episode, and I do 150. Call it, I don't know, with ads. Do 12 minutes worth of ads per hour, right? And so you get like a huge. Basically, I mean, like I'm making like 150, 200 grand a year, which is not like I'm the richest man ever, but it's also like I can go to Chipotle whenever I want. I can put gas in my car. I don't have to look at how much gas is. I can go on dates and pay for shit. I can do all of this stuff. Still have a ton of money left over that I can put into like stocks and save money and invest. Like, huh. I like that face I was making. Huh. Little eyebrow lift thing. Huh. I think I have a little bit of an Elvis. Oh my god, call incoming. Seriously, I got a call incoming. Let me see if I can say. Let me see if I can text. Oh, did it turn my camera off? Let's see. Let's go. Here we go. We're typing. I hope you can still hear me on podcast right now. We're gonna hit them with the love you. We're gonna hit them with the love you on that podcast right now. What was I talking about? Oh, I got a little Elvis Costello thing going on. Oh yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, making like okay. So no, I'm gonna know Spanish. I'm gonna like hands down know Spanish in 2 years. Whether the podcast is at the point where it's like making me 30 grand a year or it's making me 130 or 300 grand a year, whatever level it's at, I'm going to know Spanish 2 years from now. And let's say I'm starting a job in electrical engineering because that's the thing I'm studying in school. And that's the thing that I'm like, oh, this is cool. Um, and so you're just kind of like move to Austin, get a job in electrical engineering, but also work the rock scene, work the podcast circuit. I have the idea of doing stand up because I did stand up in eighth grade. I took a stand up workshop at the Comedy Spot in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's in Old Town Scottsdale. I hope it's still there. And there was a kind older lady and a kind older gentleman, and they were kind of like the two people who like ran the comedy class. And I was in eighth grade, and we had all sorts of funny jokes about me going, and getting my Hello Kitty training bra. And I was 13, and I came up with a pimp cane. It was like the cheesiest, like makeshift. I had a fur vest and a like $2 cane from Spirit Halloween. So you're just sitting there like, okay, but I had like decent material. I had like a 10, like a solid 10. And it's funny now because it's like I could like hear that back. I could like, so here's what I'd do is I'd go up, I'd do the thing. Like if it was me now and the joke still worked, assuming I wasn't, like assuming it wasn't all jokes about my age, right? Because now I'm 21 instead of 13. But if I'm doing all the jokes, like I could watch that, and then I could be like, okay, here's how to like turn this 10 into like a really good 5, really good 2. I'd probably get rid of any like big act outs or noises where to change them. Um, Topical references, they'd have to change. But anyways, I took that class. So I did that, and I write tons of like one-liners. I always when I'm in the zone and I'm like having a good time, even if I'm not, like I can always think of like wordplay, like Mark Norman. But like I have a different kind of like thing. It's pretty much I come up with a phrase, right? It's like a reverse pun. And so what I do is I come up with two synonyms for the exact same word, and it's not the most clever thing in the world, but my theory on comedy is there's a connection between things or a clever solution, and as long as you set up the pieces for that, but then you solve them and hit them with the answer before their brain had time to figure out the answer for them, that surprise, like let's say you set up like I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. It's okay now that I'm trying to think about it. But I guess I would go something like hydro, hydro hombre, also known as Aquaman in Espanol. This is a very bad example. But no, it's funny. It's funny. So what you do is right. I'd come up with like an interesting like word or phrase like, man, I gotta think of one. Um, Here we go. Anesthetic. 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 So I do something about how I have an aunt, Anna, and she can't feel anything. And then I would end with the punchline, anesthetic. And so like think about, but it would be something like that where like that's okay, that's the whole joke. It is. But like, when I have them and they're good, I'm like, oh, I like those. And I do, and I can go and I can kind of go like I find Sam Hyde's a very depressing and it's kind of polarizing, right? And I can be polarizing, but I don't really want to. Um, because anyone can be polarizing and give hot takes on politics, but no one's going to do what I'm going to do. No one else is going to do this rock thing. No one else is going to bring back rock. No one's literally going to be the person who brought rock back. Like, think about that. Like, I'm literally single handedly, well, not single handedly, not even close to single, but I'm going to be the person who brought back rock. Doesn't mean I'm going to be the big rock star, but I'm going to be the person who brought it back. I'm going to have the people on who I need to have on. I'm going to get them to start doing podcasts, right? I don't need to be the one that takes off, but I needed to be the one who got everyone doing it. I can be Adam Curry, right? I can, yeah. But like this is insane. This is insane. And so like, yeah, I'm the only one who can. No, I mean, not the only one who can, but I'm the only one who will do this. I'm the only one who will do this. I'm the only one who will bring back rock. Anyone can be controversial. Anyone can talk about politics. Anyone can talk about religion. Anyone can talk about um, gender identity, you know, and have controversial takes as they relate to biology. Anyone could talk about substance abuse issues and legalization. Anyone could talk about immigration policy and taxation, any of these things. Anyone could talk about geopolitics. Anyone could talk about like conspiracy theories about was the moon landing fake? Was the footage fake, but the moon landing happened? Were there people on the moon or was the moon empty? Right? Like anyone could talk about that kind of stuff. And like I don't actually care or really have like any strong opinions on anything really outside of I do have like I have moral, philosophical beliefs. Um but it's more at like a religious level rather than an individual policy level, right? Like I don't really be like this person is unchristian. I'm Jewish, but still I'm like I don't like that's not like, you know, I think I have mostly generally held moral values, with like do not murder, do not steal, do not lie, like stuff like that. And I don't think, I think I do a disservice to you in the audience. You're listening to like me just like Babylon about politics. Like it's a waste. It's a waste. Like yeah. Do I think I'm right? I think there's a probability that I'm probably more right than most people, just because I think I'm more informed, generally speaking. But even then, it's like it's all hedged. It's like I have no idea what actually goes on with like pretty much everything. I have what I know, what I read from books, what I heard on podcasts, right? What I mean, what I read from, I mean, like the same thing, like podcast, books. What else have I like kind of digested? I'm really trying to think. I'm like, what you see on TV, what you see in the news, what you hear people say, what you see with your own eyes, what you learn. But really, it all comes down to whatever you've learned. So it's pretty much podcasts and books, right? And documentaries. Anyways, it's just crazy though. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave politics in incendiary, commentary to other people for the most part. I know I did some podcasts a couple back where I was just reviewing albums and stuff, and I was like, whatever, this album broke my heart. It's not that good, and it's not that it's not that good. It's like it doesn't rock, right? Like I don't think Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino by the Arctic Monkeys rocks, but it's one of like the best records. It's so good. I love it so much, and it's like great. But it's not a rock record at all. It doesn't rock. And I was rating things like, does this rock? Gen Z rock thoughts. It's thoughts from the rock perspective. If you're grading it on the rock scale, well, it's like a 2 out of 10. It's like, this is not rock. It's not rock music, really. Like it doesn't have doesn't. I think you can categorize different genres based off the emotion they give you, right? Not even the quality of how good the song is or stuff like that, but to give you the right emotion, you know, you know, given that you're receptive to actually like feeling an emotion. But like, I'm about to have a nervous breakdown. My head really hurts. I'm angry, I'm hurt, head on my shoulders. Like if you're listening to like Black Flag, like that is something that's gonna get you in that zone, like jumped up, ready to go, like run into a mosh, like let's just go crazy. That's gonna do that. First couple Arctic Monkeys records, first two songs off those definitely are going to put you there. That kind of stuff, like that's not going to get you going. Like if you were there, beware the innocence of friendship. 100 no thank yous and no one. Like sweetheart. I totally butchered that. But At least that last line. I kind of had it up to that last line. We kind of had it though. We kind of had it. Um, but it's just so funny. It's like that's how I think you characterize things. And so the whole point is, I evaluate music off this, or I find a useful framework sometimes for looking and analyzing music and things is what emotion, what mood does it put you in? You know, how does it function in terms of mood? Um, Outcome of like what does it do to your mood? And generally, if it, like that's where I think emo is an interesting because I think it gets at the right thing, but it's like no, like emotion is actually the characteristic. That's why, like, blues, they go sad. For me, like, blues isn't really always sad, but it always is, like, listful and mournful. You go the old school blues, yeah. Oh my God, that is sad. Um, it's brutal. It's like brutal. 3 hours past midnight, my old lady nowhere around, nowhere around. Yeah, I don't want to think sad thoughts right now. I took an antidepressant today. Okay. I have a therapy appointment booked. I'm like, okay, let's think positive thoughts. So back to what I was saying. Doing a weird trick with my mouth for the audio listeners. Huh. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm going long now. It's like, do you split this up into two podcasts? Hmm. No, but also it's like, do you shut it off because you're going long? You're like, no. You want to practice talking. You want to practice getting on here. So I was even talking about. I was talking about how, I don't want to be incendiary and like needlessly incendiary, right? I don't want to be causing controversy. First, I don't want to be causing controversy for the sake of causing controversy. If anything, if keeping it PG, it doesn't mean you don't touch deep themes or things that are difficult to process or understand or that are emotionally intense. And you don't always want to. Like, I wish I wasn't as intense of a person. I don't really wish for anything that isn't, because, logically speaking, that doesn't do anything. It can't have any positive outcome of wishing that you were a different way if there's no way of, kind of changing it. I guess there are ways of like being less intense. And part of that too is like being like, I'm going to keep on. I want to be intense about the things that I'm intense about. I want to be intense, positive way, right? Like the fact that I'm going to bring back rock. It didn't matter that I didn't feel good. I still like my stomach's still kind of upset. My head is like stuffy. It's like, don't care. Don't care. I hopped on. Hopped on the podcast today. Don't care if this video right now it looks great. It looks like 4K. It looks really good. But maybe when I export this video, it's going to be like 1080p. And I want to be like annoyed. Mildly annoyed. But is it that big of a deal? Is it that big of a deal? I don't know. But think about this. It's the year of the dragon. Rock is 12 years behind stand-up comedy. But that's assuming the comedians don't get involved. Now, here's an interesting thing. I guess that's what you'd have to do. I guess you'd have to tell a comedian, let's keep it PG. As much as it breaks my heart, just say, like, treat it like it's Nate Bargatze. Like, just keep it clean. Because that's just my brand. Like, I love offensive comedy. Like, I love, like, edgy things. Like, I don't, all that stuff's well and good. But I think I have much more things to offer. I think it makes it easier for people to appreciate me if I keep it, PG. I mean, really, I don't want to be polarizing people. needlessly in an ever divisive world. And, doesn't mean I'm going to chase being king of unity overall. It's not like I'm going to put bringing everyone together as my highest priority. And so then I won't say the things I feel that are true. Like, I feel like it's true to say that Queens of the Stone Age first album is a little all over the place, and some of the songs feel like long-winded tangents. You could do, I think there's a version of that album where you have a little more clever songwriting in the sense that you would take two or three of those songs and you would turn them into like longer songs that are like intermixed. You would shorten some of the parts that are like jammier and drawn out. But some of those songs I think are perfect too. Um, I think the latest Arctic Monkeys album wasn't good. And I'm not saying it's not rock. I don't think it's particularly rock, but I also don't think it's particularly good work from them because I've been listening to a lot of jazz and more lounge stuff. A lot. When I say a lot, I mean more than I normally do or I have in the past. But like, you go and listen to like George Benson or Sinatra. Like, go listen to anything that's like more kind of like low tempo, not rock guitars, spacier. I mean, especially compared to Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, it's clear. You're like, I didn't like it when I first heard it because I wanted a rock album, and it totally isn't. But I grew to like it after a couple listens because it was just so well done. It's good. The car, I really tried. Like, I really tried. Like, I've tried a lot, but at a certain point, you're just like, I'm not liking it. Like Royal Blood's fourth album, fourth, yes, fourth. I think it's so great, and I really love that record. I didn't like it the first time I heard it. I listened to it a lot. Um, Black Keys record. It's aggressively okay, and I like it. I like it, but like if I'm like having to be like recommending it to people, um, there's like five songs that I think are incredible, and there's four that I think are like just very lighthearted, very bland, um, but are also like have a good charm to them, you know, and they're like one of the greatest bands of all time, and they still are. They're one of those bands who are still going and still making good stuff, like Queens of Stone Age. Like I don't think the Strokes' like latest record was good. I don't think that was good on anyone's part. I don't think Julian Casablancas' latest record was nearly as attention grabbing because I couldn't even get through the whole thing. Not I couldn't, but I didn't make as much of an effort because I just wasn't liking. Nothing was grabbing onto me, and so I didn't really feel reason to try and push through and like listen to that whole record. Versus Francis Trouble, I listened to like 5 seconds of it and I was like, holy cow, what? And then I kept going and going and going. And if I didn't know one song because I just skipped it because I couldn't get through the first couple seconds because I was impatient, right? But my brother had listened to that song, he'd be like, "What? You don't know that one?" He's like, "What are you doing? Go listen right now." And it's like, it feels crazy to me. Like, Francis Trouble is one of the greatest records of the last, like, it's one of the last great rock records. Like, latest. Like, why would you not make a Strokes record like that? Why would you not let whoever was doing the songwriting there go work with the Strokes? Let's say it was like Albert Hammond Jr. himself. Well, he's in the Strokes. Let him lead the thing. And then if Julian, because Julian's in the Voids, and the Voids is coming up with lots of creative stuff. It's a little more out there, so you'd probably tame it in maybe a little, just so it's less avant-garde, so it's more palatable to like the current audience and a little bit more in line with what they expect. I'm not saying it needs to be totally one to one. Like look at Queens of the Stone Age. This record doesn't sound anything like Air Vulgaris. Doesn't sound anything like really Villains. Um, doesn't really sound like Clockwork. There's lots of interesting characteristics from all those records that are kind of you can see on there, and you can see lots of things. It's the same band, but it's a different album, and you're not mixing any of those albums up. Which one's which? They're all very different and unique, but it's still palatable to the fan base of the people who are the fans, right? And so likewise, I think if something like the Strokes, and so here's the thing. See what I'm doing right here? I would love to talk to Albert Hammond Jr. I'd love to talk to Julian Casablancas. And I think they're incredible musicians. I think they're some of the greatest musicians of all time. Clearly, like top 100. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, friggin' Jimi Hendrix got can't even go on the list. I don't know. But they're in there. Like, I gotta be. Like, I don't see how they're not on there. In the list of top 100 musicians ever. Well, maybe you're including like Beethoven, but even then, it's like only 5 guys from like back then get on. Like jazz, but I think just like rock or anything related to it, like definitely top 100, top 50. Like, I mean, there's a lot of good rock stars though. So like, but the whole point is like, and I don't want to like, and that's not the first thing I want to say, when I come up and talk to them. But my intention behind that series of podcasts was to go and say like, this is the down low. I'm not going to give you BS about this. Like, all the latest KG Elephant albums have been aggressively good. They're good records. Melophobia was a great record. Tell Me I'm Pretty was good. Social Cues is fine. I haven't listened to this last one. I started listening to some of the singles and I was like, no, off. And then friggin' the self-titled of KG Elephant, amazing. Thank You, Happy Birthday, amazing. Melophobia, good, but like, it kind of marked the end of them saying like, this is the last kind of like good rock. The good, just straight up rock music we're going to do is some of the stuff on there. It's a brilliant record, though. It's a really good record. I was so angry when I got it. I tell that story in the interview. Not the interview, in the podcast of how, when I got Melophobia, it was my 11th birthday, or maybe a little bit before, a little bit after. And I had been listening to the first album and the second album, and those are my favorite records. It was like great, like rock and roll, blues rock, like kind of like alternative rock, like just good stuff, garage, like just good. And then the next one is like the same thing but punkier, but then also like more like kind of emo. You're like, what? I'm like, dude, I gotta see what these guys do, because they have hits on them too. Those, it's always something, and ain't no rest for the wicked. And one ear and right out the other, people talking shit. Like, those are incredible songs, despite the record overall being like hard rocking. Like, and you're like, whoa, you're teaching me new things can be done. Like, and not just kind of like, not like you found a new idea, but like someone else is gonna figure out how to do the best version of. Like, you found new ways of doing this, and you did it best. You perfected these new things. You're like, that's incredible. And they put out a record basically says, we're done with that stuff. We're done being a rock band. Like, we're going to turn into like a pop rock, which is good. But I'm not going to go and say like, oh, that's the best rock record. It's like, what? No. Like AM by Arctic Monkeys, still a rock record, much poppier. But by Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, like not a rock record at all. There's nothing wrong with saying that. And Alex Turner and like, Julian Casablanca and I forget the name. Oh my god, the guy from Cage Elephant, the lead guy. Is it Matt? Oh, but then like Dan Auerbach and like Patrick. Oh my god, what's his name? What's the drummer from the Black Keys? Oh my god, I'm forgetting his last name. But Dan and Pat, like, they're the best, and like Jack White's the best. Even if like clearly I wouldn't be posting about as much political stuff, or if I did, I would try and like, I don't know, be more thoughtful. I mean, because I'm certain he's thoughtful in what he believes and where his positions come from and all sorts of things. And so, you know, I guess, but there always is a less divisive way to present ideas. Dr. Mike Israel talks about this, but so does the book. I think, is it Brutal Conversations or Difficult Conversations? And it talks about how to actually like, um, Dr. Mike will talk about from Renaissance periodization. Dr. Mike Israetel, he'll talk about arguing to convince versus arguing to win, right? And if you're arguing to convince, that's kind of assuming that like, here's where I am, here's where you are. The truth is somewhere in the middle between the two of us, and the goal of the conversation is to bring both of us closer to the truth, somewhere in the middle, right? Doesn't mean we get there and both end up agreeing, but just bring us closer, right? Um, it's not that I'm trying to say you're wrong and make you wrong, because then I win. You're like, what did you win? The only thing to really win by a conversation that could even be seen as an argument is influencing or changing the heart or mind of someone else, right? So it's like if Jack White has something he would like to, they rightfully so thinks is important, and he should use his platform to talk about. Okay, yeah, I get that, and I respect that. Though at this point in my career, that's not what I personally um, would like to do, you know, and I'm going to make efforts to be, to avoid being needlessly um, abrasive. And that doesn't mean I want like, it means you don't roll over to criticism and people who say, let's say they bring up my skin color, um, or people bring up my religion, right? Things like that. There's lots of things you can pick out about me that people would have very choice things to say, and they would say because either you could say from any sort of political perspective, you could say people would like to, or cultural perspective, they have things they could pick out about me, um, and uh, and so I'm not attempting to get those people to love me, because this is something interesting. I forget who, but and I'm not, clearly I'm not um, Christian. Let's see, pulling this up. I don't even need to pull it up, but it was. I mean, it was an interesting point as much as I said I was going to try and avoid. But here's the thing, I'll show you. I'm trying to be thoughtful, and I'm not talking like in platitudes, but it was this idea. Um, I think it was a black preacher, an African American preacher, and what he was talking about was that a trap for minority groups or groups that are marginalized, um, and experience racism, or any of those sorts of things, is you don't want to get in the trap, where you're trying to orient your entire life and everything you do is to make the people who don't like you, and to force them to like you, even if they say they hate you. Because sometimes it's just, live and let live, in the sense that they're going to have their lifestyle and they can be mean and have their prejudices. But as long as they're not going to try and like harm me, my family, you know, my community, my values, the things I care about, I don't need to force them to love me, right? And just being a good person and, demonstrating that and focusing on the things I care about and offering, branches for people to, change their perspective, and being open to have conversations with people who, on paper dislike you. It's like that's kind of like, a better solution, instead of chasing your life trying to get, the approval or the acceptance from people who don't like you. You know, there's so many comedians. Like the first time I saw Theo Vaughn on a podcast, I was like, I can't stand this guy. And that was me. That was just me for some reason. Nothing wrong with him. Great guy. Very interesting. Love listening to his podcast. I mean, I never met the guy, so I can't really say great guy. But, I've listened to his podcast. I've seen his interviews, I've seen his episodes, and I really appreciate, um, his comedy. And yeah, I think he's a funny guy. But what's so funny is I just didn't I just didn't like him. I just went, no, don't like you. Same with like Trevor Wallace. I was like, no, don't like you. Now I like those guys. Lots of comedians like that, where you're like, no, I don't like you. And then like 3 years later, you're like, why did I say that? you're like, I get them now, and you're like, I think they're funny. I get their personality, right? And so, oh, like Jordan Jensen, who's a female comedian, right? She's the co-host of Being Ian with Jordan. But I think she's like a great comedian. Um, I think she's very good on podcasts typically. And what's so funny is I remember probably the first time I saw her like 2 or 3 years ago on the internet. And I was like, not my thing. And I gave a George Costanza, oy vey. No, but I was like, it's not my thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, it's not my thing. And I was wrong. And not wrong. I was right then. But I'm like, no, I like them. And so that's the thing. It's like, someone doesn't like you right now. It's like, they don't like you right now. But if you keep doing what you're doing, and they keep doing what they're doing, I think the probability that they will like you goes up. Now, if Jordan Jensen, when I didn't like her, when that was my initial response, she dragged me through a computer like the ring and pulled me into her living room and said, you're going to like me right now. I would probably hate her for the rest of time. Just on the fact that you won't respect that I just don't like you, and you're like, no, I'm insistent that you need to acquiesce. That's what makes people dig their feet into the Streisand effect. They're like, don't pirate my album for free. People go, don't tell me what to do. I think I will pirate your album. People are petty. We are petty. That's what we are as humans, right? And so it's funny. You're just like, you know, and so that was something that's, I believe he was a preacher. I could be wrong, be mishearing, but it's the idea. It's not really who it comes from, but the idea of like, if people despise you, it's not your mission to make them love you, right? Someone says, I hate you. It's like, it's not my job in life to make you love me. Really it is like, live for me, live for those I care about, and everything kind of expands out from there. There's a little philosophical, extrapolate some political beliefs if you'd like. You're probably going to be wrong. Which is a very funny thing, I try and not get like needlessly political, especially, but if I'm like with close friends, like, they ask my perspective on something, I'll give it to them. But it's just funny, if someone tries to pry me or push me on something and give a stance on something in like a more informal setting, like a kickback or something where I'm like, I've met this person once and we're all going around, like, usually if I give them one opinion, they try and predict like 18 others based off of it because they like to go, oh, well, you believe this, so you probably believe these 18 other things that people who tend to believe that believe. Or else you believe these 18 things, but you said one from this list and not that list or not that list. And then when I'm just genuinely have like, an opinion that I've kind of like synthesized from a variety of sources and I've tried to like suss out. And then if I'm not very confident on it, I like to couch it in language appropriately, saying to my current understanding. But I could totally be wrong though, and I totally respect whatever um, you might think that's in contrary, because I can totally be wrong. Like I could be 1,000% wrong. So like, but this is just what I think right now with what limited information I have. And that's the funny thing to always contextualize with like stuff like that. It's like I could totally be wrong. Like I just want you to be aware, like clearly I can be wrong and clearly you could be wrong. But this is, once again, I don't want to even say that because then it sounds like I'm trying, the only reason I'm saying things and making good points is so I can eventually get and make them wrong. I don't want to make them wrong. Because then they don't want to actually, because then they have no interest in hearing what you have to say. If you go and needlessly make people wrong, it's like, yeah, that'll win you friends. That'll make people, open to hearing what you have to say and being interested in what you're providing. It's like, no. It's like, so don't needlessly go around and alienate people. Don't make them wrong. Some people, want to be shocking and inflammatory, and I like, doing things. But like if I write a song with like some lyrics that make you go, what did you just say? It's because that's true and that's how I feel. But if you look at it, either it's a metaphor, or if it is literal, hint, it's not going to be some, I'll put it this way, something that you would predict based off of one belief. You'd extrapolate 18 other things. I don't have that. You could put me in a bucket. You could put me in a bucket. You could definitely put me in a bucket. But where does that get you? I'm only 21. I only know what I know. Right? Like, think about that. I only know what I know. And even if, let's say, I was 81, would still only know potentially 4 times the amount of knowledge, right? I don't think I know 1/4 of everything ever. Probably know like one infinitesimal amount. Yes, hello. Oh, dog wants to say hi. Ooh, the dog is saying hi. Well, podcastians, appreciate you listening here. And guess what I want to talk about? I don't know. What do I want to talk about next time? I don't know. I think I might want to have a guest on or a friend. So if anyone is actually listening, because it's funny too, because it's like, I know people are going to listen to these. I know people are going to listen to these, but they might not be listening to these when I'm putting them out, right? They might be listening to these 2 years from now, which is very funny. So it's like if I say right now, like, hey, you should hit me up if you want to come on the podcast, if you want to talk music, right, or something for like an hour at a time. That's something I'd say. But in 2 years from now, it's like, what if this is huge? You should still hit me up. You should still hit me up. Like Instagram, Connor O period Farrell, CONNER O period FARRELL. Twitter, I believe, is something similar. I kind of have it private because I posted some just like esoteric stuff and like lyrics. And I'm like, I want to like go through and like kind of like save those for later, but also like take them down. Because I think I did post some more incendiary stuff. And I don't want to be controversial for the sake of being controversial. Yes, this has been well belated by now. But, you know, it is belated, well belated. I'm uncertain on the verbiage and what's appropriate, right? This is where you'd get someone like Jimmy Carr, who's very well read and articulate, to come and spike you on a spearhead. Well, anyways, good podcast. Good time, guys, gals, whatever. You want to hop on the podcast? Hit me up. Hit me up on Instagram. Hit me up on here. Hit me up on YouTube. Go on Spotify where I'm posting the podcast. I guess I should probably start posting it to Twitter once I get that ready. Yes, I'll start posting the podcast to Twitter and Spotify and YouTube. Because then, if the Twitter pops off, because that's my real goal, is once I get to 500 listens per episode, I'll start reaching out to sponsors. How do I reach out to sponsors? You think about if I'm going to be the Rogan of rock in 10 years, or one of them, who's going to make a bunch of money because I'm bringing back rock? Is it guitar companies? Is it people who make accessories for guitars? Is it people, like who? And then second off is who's going to want to buy favor with me now while it's cheap? It's very cheap to become my friend right now if you're a big company. If you're a big company, it's very easy to buy, like, the beginning of a great relationship, as long as you're not a total a-hole, or you try and be controlling and manipulative, because I'm aware of the fact that this is going to be like the Rogan of Rock in 10 years, or one of them, right? And so that's where it's like, but it will be extreme, an extreme discount. You reach out now, like, probably like 10 years from now, like when I'm a literal kingmaker, like in the same way Rogan is. And that's not because I want to be a kingmaker. It's because someone needs to do it and I can do it. It needs to happen. If we want to bring back rock, we got to do it. Don't really want this. Well, I don't know, like, I'll gladly do it. I'll gladly do it. I love getting to talk to people, and this is what I'm good at, and this is my gift. But I know who I am. I know what I'm supposed to do. This is where I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be tinkering on the laptop and learning all the intricacies of audio engineering and recording and mixing. I'm going to learn some of that stuff, but that's not my role. That's not my skill set and the things I've got. I know what I have that other people don't have, and it's the ability to do this. It's the ability to be the one who um, can be a kingmaker. And that's because there needs to be a kingmaker. And I don't see anyone else doing it. There needs to be a kingmaker. There needs to be many kingmakers. There needs to be many kingmakers. There needs to be a decentralized network of kingmakers, all independently collaborating together because they like working together and they appreciate what they can do when they can join forces. And they like rock and roll. But there needs to be lots and lots of kingmakers. There needs to be lots. There needs to be lots of kingmakers. Lots of them. But I'm going to be one of the kingmakers because someone needs to do it, and I'm going to do it. And with that, a byproduct is it's going to cost a lot to get my ear, to get my favor. It's going to cost a lot. It's not going to be as simple as send me a guitar. Right now, it might be as simple as, like, pay whatever the going rate for podcast sponsoring is, right? And be one of the first sponsors. And, like, let's say it's Sheath Underwear, who's got the UFC. They've got the UFC on lock. But once I'm one of the kingmakers of rock and roll, what would they pay? What would they pay right now if they knew Joe Rogan was going to be Joe Rogan in 5 years, the way he is now, right? If they were just like, yeah, but you can pay him just normal prices right now, and you're going to be something that's associated with Joe Rogan forever. That's going to be something people think of when they think of Joe Rogan. They think of you. It's like, oh, that's like millions of dollars you'd be willing to pay. Hint: that is not nearly. I don't know. Yeah. That's like I literally the going rate. So if I have 2,000 followers, you know what I mean, or 2,000 listens per episode, right? And it's $20 per 30-second ad, let's say, per 1,000 people listening. So 2,000 people, 1 minute would be what, $80? You pay $80 an episode. Let's do 150 a year. Let's see, we got a calculator right here. Let's go. Let's see, your Sheath Underwear or something. That's what, 12 grand a year. 12 grand a year, and you're actually getting conversion because you're getting the market rate on advertising. You're paying the market rate on advertising. And so basically for free, not only are you getting the advertising you're paying for, literally the amount you're paying for, because you're paying the market rate, but then you're getting for free to be associated with like the Rogan of rock forever. Forever. The Godfather, the Kingmaker, the Apprentice. These are like invaluable. Like, I know it's great you've got the UFC and whatnot, and that is great. That is great. I know it's a veteran. I know I've watched you do interviews and stuff. Not a ton. I'm not going to lie to you. I've watched you do a couple interviews. Seem very cool. You've been sponsoring lots of comedians and things, and I appreciate that about you. Now you're sponsoring the UFC. I've had Sheath Underwear, by the way, since like 2021 when Legion of Skanks like started being sponsored by them. I bought some Sheath Underwear. I paid like $100 and I got like 4 pairs. It was like buy 4 get 1 free. It's like 5 pairs. But it's literally like I have Sheath Underwear and then I've got a couple pairs of brown underwear I wear. Not brown, like black Kirkland. I've got Kirkland and I've got Sheath. So Sheath Underwear, if you would like to pay the going rate to get in on the ground floor and strike while the iron's hot, because you have the entire rock industry you can get through. And then once you are big and known as rock thing, you could probably branch out and grab hip hop and grab country and grab a lot of this other stuff too. Because if you think once it's big, once we're big, once rock's big, once this podcast's big, once all of it's big, you don't think like it's going to be easy to like, and not even easy to become friends with. Don't you think it would make sense that like the big rock stars and big country people are going to want to hang out, or at least know each other or meet each other, especially if they're all friends with the comedians? Shocker. Shocker. You don't think we do crossover show or crossover song? Let's say I become huge. Let's say I become huge. Just easy because it's simplest example. Let's say I become huge rock star. Black Licorice becomes a huge band. You don't think we'd instantly do a song with Jelly Roll? The instant that's a possibility, I'm doing that. The instant that's possible, I'm doing it with Taylor Swift. Maybe not Kanye. I don't think Kanye would want to do a song with me. I there you go. There's an incendiary joke. I'm Jewish. Kanye made lots of comments that people would deem anti-Semitic. So I don't think Kanye would even want to do a song with me. There you go. I've explained the joke for you thoroughly. Um, but yeah, think about that. Oh, yeah, so you don't think I'm going to do a Jelly Roll collab? First thing I can? You don't think I'm doing Taylor Swift collab? You don't think it's happening? You don't think I'm getting Matt Heafy or whoever his name is, or Healy from 1975, or the guy from Coldplay, or the guy from Imagine Dragons, or U2? You don't think I'm. That's the first thing I'm doing. I know I love rock and like making like rock and roll music, and I'll collab with all the rock bands, but like the first thing I'm doing was after I'm collabed with all the rock bands, or a couple of them at least. Um, like I would instantly be like, Black Keys, Dan and Pat, please. We're like the Black Please, the Black Licorice, please. I'd be pleading, and my band is called Black Licorice, so I'd be making Black Please. To the Black Keys. Put that in the song. Rhyme about it. Oh, Andrew Dice Clay. Andrew Dice Clay. I did Grease in high school, okay? Andrew Dice Clay needs to. No, because it was when I went and did stand up classes in 8th grade at the comedy spot in Arizona. My dad's friend did an Andrew Dice Clay impression with a Zippo lighter and a leather jacket. So that was one of like my fondest, most vivid, clear memories of like comedy. Um, Regardless of what you think about his material, and clearly he's playing a character, right? Like that's the whole concept of generally comedy is you say things you don't mean or things that are just silly for the sake of being silly. Usually it's not very sincere. Um, and if it is sincere, the joke is, wow, it's kind of funny how sincere you're being. Like, you know, I mean, anyways, what was I even talking about? Oh, I would collab with all these people. Anyways, but yeah, Sheath Underwear. You don't think I'd like tell everyone? You don't think you'd be backstage? I would have like a Sheath sponsored outfit. We'd have a banner with like the Sheath logo in it. We would do like Rock Dynasty Sheath stuff. We'd make everyone be wearing Sheath. You'd be sponsoring every podcast, like at whatever like a normal rate is, instead of like a much like I mean, you can't make any promises, but like you'd be building relationship, and it would cost you nothing more than it normally does to advertise on a podcast or anything. Like you'd literally be paying the normal rate to advertise. Like let's say 2 months from now. Hi there. I got my dog. I love my dog, but I spent a lot of time with him already. I don't need to like pet him as I'm trying to podcast, have him pull out a cable. Anyways, it's been 2.5 hours. No one's listening. But the guy from Sheath, listen here. You're paying the amount you're normally going to pay for advertising. You're paying the amount already. You're already paying it. And I can't guarantee that like anything. Like you can never guarantee anything for certain. But like you seem cool. I'm pretty cool. And I'm gonna be the Rogan of Rock. So like there's no downside. Worst case scenario, you just get the best advertising. But that's not worst case scenario because I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be successful and famous. And let's talk about this. Let's say then you throw a UFC person on my podcast. You get me someone from the UFC. You got me like Sugar Sean O'Malley. I don't know, whoever like wears Sheath who's in the UFC. Or you get like some of those comedians, like I said, you get like Dan Soder or someone. Because maybe, I don't think you sponsor his podcast. No, you sponsored a lot of the Gas Digital stuff. I think you still do. Hoodies, gator necks. That was the big joke Big J would always make. You need to get your base layers, hoodies and gator necks. And he was like reading that ad read like months before the winter. That was like last year, probably on Skanks, but yeah, so Sheath Underwear guy. Seriously. I mean, like, oh, here's the thing too, is you can say I'm the one who did it. I made them famous. I'm the one who brought back rock. That's insane, and that's accurate. Oh, I mean, this is insane, of course. Yeah, you're going to be like the one who gets to say, I brought back rock. You're going to get to be able to say that, and I will back that up because this is on video right now. Anyone can see this, right? And so it's like, that's the funny thing is Rock is 12 years behind comedy, right? But it could be 1 year behind. Like, I want you to realize this. Let's say, guy from Sheath Underwear, you sponsor this podcast. You say, screw it, I'm going to give you 200 grand a year for the podcast, right? And we're going to throw on like Dan Soder and all these people, but we're going to be the marquee sponsor. And we're going to help you get all of these established comedians and people with the express purpose of bringing back rock. And we're going to help you actually get some of these country people on and some of these rock people, whoever we have connections to. And we're going to make it so like, holy cow, this podcast gets like 40,000 views per episode. And so at that price, paying 200 grand for like 8 ad reads per episode times 150 episodes, like that's a steal. That's a steal. If I had if I had 2,000 listeners per episode and I do 12 minutes of ads, right, for every hour, I do an hour a time. That ends up being like 150 grand a year. That's my goal. That's my goal. That's my point where it's like podcast full time, rock and roll full time. Then we like grow this thing like crazy. Then we do the new Rock Dynasty. We really kick it into high gear from wherever we get at by then, right? And so likewise, it's like if Sheath Guy, literally right now, if he, instead of me like slowly podcasting and doing this over the next decade, and playing shows and doing things and then working my job and like, having a good career and building up a network in Austin and doing things and getting some local notoriety, collabing with people, building up a base of artists, slowly working my way up this whole time. What if, what if the Sheath Guy goes, I'll give you 150 right now for the next year. I'm going to get all these big guests on. So instead of it being, 150 for 2,000 viewer amount of ads, for 2,000 viewers per episodes, instead, I'm only paying you 150 still. It's all from me instead of just a bunch of different sponsors, but still, it's like I'm the marquee sponsor. 150 is probably not a lot, especially if you're able to sponsor the UFC. And also, I know you probably make insane margins on that underwear. I gladly bought it at such a high price because it never goes bad. Um, it's incredible. It's literally the underwear I wear, and you're not paying me. I paid you like a lot for underwear, and I gladly did it, and I will gladly do it again. So just keep that in mind. Like, if you paid me 150, right, for the year, you helped me get on like Soder and Shafir, even if it's just Big J, like, and you just said this guy's gonna bring back rock. I'm confident we're literally giving him the 150 and like we're putting money down because this is what's going to happen, and we totally understand the thing, and we can help it happen way quicker. If you do that, if you throw me the podcast guests, you do the 150, you get on this whole thing way early, and then you really do get to claim we're the ones who made it happen. And who do you think is going to continue to be like the marquee sponsor? Like I like Fender, I like Gibson, I like all the major guitar brands, right? I like all that stuff. But if Sheath is what literally made it happen, underwear is rock and roll. Sheath is rock and roll. There's nothing more rock and roll than having a pair of Sheath underwear. Seriously, who could do rock and roll without a Sheath underwear? Come on, think about it. So that's kind of what's happening here. And yeah, so that might happen, it might not happen, but that's kind of where we're at. And so I probably need to take a break, use the restroom, go walk around, go start downloading this, let this export. But yeah, this is crazy. This is a 2.5 hour episode. It's good, but strike while the iron's hot, right? Seriously, think about this. Think about this. What if you do listen to this Mr. Sheath Guy? You do. Dan Soder, what if you listen to this whole thing and you go, holy cow, he's right. And then you get in on this, right? It's crazy to think this is the beginning of the beginning. People genuinely don't know. Like, it's happening right here, right now, in this moment, and no one knows that this is happening. this is going to be the thing in the history book. This is going to be the thing in the textbook. This is going to be the Wikipedia page on rock. Like when they get to 2020s, 2030s, the history book on rock on Wikipedia or whatever, it's going to say New Rock Dynasty 2024 to present. Or like first version of New Rock Dynasty 2024 to like 2039. Like that's what's going to be there. Not Rolling Stones did 30th album. Love Rolling Stones. Barely know any of their songs. Wish nothing against the guys. I did listen to the new album. Angry. It's good. Okay, it's a catchy song. I get why they're big. I get it. They're great. But I don't think that's going to be the thing in rock history. Is the 30th Rolling Stone record. I'm almost certain what's going to go in the textbook is New Rock Dynasty. Connor Farrell. New Rock Dynasty. It's going to go New Rock Dynasty. It's going to go Connor Farrell. It's so weird because I don't know. I don't like. I don't know. It feels messed up to say, but it's just reality. No one else is going to do it. It's going to be what ends up in the book. What it's going to end up being is Connor Farrell, New Rock Dynasty. Connor Farrell, New Rock Dynasty. Connor Farrell, New Rock Dynasty, Black Licorice. Connor Farrell, New Rock Dynasty, Black Licorice. That's what's going to be in the book. That's what's going to be in the book. Because even if no one ever, like, none of the Black Licorice songs are, like, super iconic, Black and Black, Back in Black, or, like, Enter Sandman, anything that becomes, like, a super, super classic, even if it doesn't, like, Connor Farrell, New Rock Dynasty 2024 is going to be in the textbook. It's just crazy, and that's what's going to be, and that's what's going to shape the next 50 years of rock. The next 50 years of rock. That's insane. The next 50 years is going to be shaped by what's happening right now in this room. Like, genuinely, the next 50 years are going to be shaped by this. The next 50 years are going to be shaped by this. And it's just crazy to think it's like, it is so funny. No one realizes. And I guess these happened before the internet too, but it's like there was a time when the Sex Pistols or whoever met for the first time and they played for the first time together and they played shows where people weren't really coming. And at some point it flipped and now we're here. And no one knew what that was. No one knew that was happening when it happened. They see it after, but no one knew it was happening. This is the first time anyone's known it was happening. I didn't even realize like 2-3 years ago when I probably did the first podcast episode. We're probably on episode 30 now. 40. It's probably episode 40 of The Rock Show with Connor Farrell. Think about that. Episode 40. Oh my God. We're going to be at 100, 200 way faster than we realize. But it's crazy to think. I did not realize 3 years ago this was going to literally shape the next 50 years of rock. Like, my goal was have a good band, be a good rock star. I'm charismatic. I'm fun. I love entertaining people. I'm really extroverted like that. And that's what I want to do with my life. You know, like imagine you had like $100 million, right? And you could do anything you wanted in the world. It's like podcast, play shows, make music, connect with musicians, make really good stuff. And do an effective job of promoting it. Make effective, good music, promote it effectively. And so it's like, but I realized like, oh no, like, no one's going to do it but me. And I'm going to be the guy who does it. Like, it's still weird. It's still weird, but I'm going to be the guy who does it. Well, I really hope there's a kid I played with, a cat I played with, who's a bassist named Kobe, who I think likes some more like fusion jazz type stuff, and rock, of course. But I really want to. I think I might try and have him on soon, and I really like wish I could like talk him in and be like, dude, I know you're doing TikToks and stuff. Do a podcast as well. Once a week, do a podcast. I will come on every episode for the first week until you get like in the groove of it. But like, start doing it. Start doing it. Because like, I don't want to be. I need to be that guy. I need to be the guy who gets everyone doing podcasts. Same way Rogan got everyone doing a podcast. I need to get everyone to do a podcast. You could say no one needs more podcasts. Yeah, you do. You need rock and roll. You don't have it. Where are the rock bands? Huh? Shocker. Not there. You need a podcast. Sit down. Am I wrong? Think about it. You don't have bands. Don't have podcasts. You have lots of comedians. They all have podcasts. Huh? Shocker. Yeah. So maybe that's what we need, huh? Yeah. Yeah, maybe that is. Maybe that's what's gonna happen. Maybe I need to go around and tell everyone, go to the podcast. Go. I bring them on my podcast. We start doing it together. So it doesn't feel uncomfortable. It doesn't feel weird. We start doing it. They know how to do it. Boom. Go. Go. I'm gonna get people from my podcast to be guests on your podcast. You're gonna get people on. Honestly, I'm just the starting place of it all. I'm the core of the sun or the nuclear reactor. You know, I'm going to do it. I'm going to whip everyone into frenzy. I'm going to say, here's the gear. Here's what you need. Start doing it. Here's how you make, friggin' a thumbnail in Canva. Here's how you do art direction. Go into Pinterest, find things you like. See what you can, make yourself and collage together. See what stuff you can get, paintings that aren't copyrighted, and like use imagery and things and Photoshop them together. If you want to, you can use AI. Like if that's your thing. If you have Adobe and you have Lightroom and all these things, maybe do photography and do a collage with that, or just do a good photo on a background, right? But like, I'm going to do all that stuff. I'm going to be like, here's your audio interface. Here's your thing. Here's how, if you have a Mac, how to do it with the Mac and your iPhone, like I'm doing right now. And here's how to do it even if you don't, because use Riverside. I don't know if Riverside is free or if I'm paying like $30 a year or something, but this is well worth it. So I'm going to do 150 episodes. I'm going to literally bring back rock. I'm going to have a multi-million, it's probably going to be $100 million empire, like within the next decade. Crazy to think about. And here's the thing is like, I'm kind of jaded now. I don't really care about money. I took a break from school and I started working a bunch of odd jobs and stuff. And I tried doing things and working on stuff, working with people who already have businesses and trying to help them grow their businesses. But I didn't get anything down in writing, and that was my biggest mistake, is you always get something down in writing. If you're entering a business agreement, and especially if you're the one with no money, nothing to lose, you get it written that you also do get to gain something. Anyways, I'm a little jaded about the whole money stuff right now. It's a little bit of a sensitive issue. Not a little, well, it's fine. But in the sense that I don't like need to be 100 millionaire. Like I don't need like to be rich. You know what I mean? I'd like to, and the reason I'm getting a degree that lets me like make six figures is so that I can comfortably go to Chipotle and pay rent and eventually save up and buy a house. That's the extent of my ambition, oh, I need more money. It's like, no. And the money so that I can like eat food and like do stuff, and then eventually more money so I can take care of kids and a family. Shocker. I don't need to be like super rich and driving around in fancy cars. Don't really care. Don't really care. I don't right now. I was 21. But it's weird because probably within the next 2-3 decades, I'm going to have hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm going to have a castle in Scotland. I'm going to have bands out there. I'm going to have people podcasting. I'm probably it's going to be insane. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the biggest thing in the world, and I'm probably going to be one of the most like famous musicians in history. even if not for my music. But isn't it weird? I'm going to be one of the most famous musicians in history. And I'm sitting here right now, and no one knows it. They don't know it. You can say this is delusion. It's not delusion. It's just basic probabilities and statistics and looking at patterns. It's like, oh, I'm a talker. I know how to talk to people. I know how to get other people on who already have followings, right? And so you just chain it, even if it's as little as possible. It's the same way I knew how to like play shows and book my band when I started out, right? You go to shows, you start helping out, you start talking to people, you start meeting people. You say, hey, can we open for you? Oh, yeah, good. And you book things like 4 months out, and you start doing it. You start promoting, get your band really good, really tight. You get some stickers together. You get people who are going to watch the merch table and make sure your gear doesn't get stolen. So you hide your gear, behind the merch table. You get all the logistics figured out. You figure out parking. You figure out everything, right? Like, Likewise, it's straightforward. You do a podcast, you know how to network with people, you get people on your show, you keep doing that, you keep chaining that, you have something interesting, you have something gripping, and even if you don't have much at all, someone's going to like you. 1 out of 1,000 is going to like you, and all it takes is 1 out of 1,000 to click, and they keep clicking, and more and more and more, and more people get introduced to you, and the bigger you get, the easier it gets for people to find you, and they realize they like you because other people see you, and they associate with you, and then people, there's a bucket of people they can, pull on as connections. If I like this guy and I like this guy and I like half the people who all like him, then I'm probably going to like him. And they go and they like you. And then, oh, look, now you're big and influential. And just like everyone else is just going to do what they're going to do with it. But what I'm going to do with it is bring back rock. And like that's going to happen. And that's the entire reason for it. Oh my God. Because here's the thing is like, go listen to my music. My music's great. Come listen to me. Come talk to me. But like, I'm here to bring back rock. I'm here to bring back rock. I'm here for rock culture. Let's say 1 in 10 Americans are, rock and roll fans. They're really fans of rock and roll. Guess what? They have nothing. They have no culture. They've got old bands who are getting older who are putting out increasingly less rock and roll records. Records that are more and more soft. Do you want there to be rock bands? Do you want there to be rock bands in the future? Okay. Listen to this show. Send it to your friends. Get them listening. If 2,000 people listen to this episode and then the next one and then the next one and then the next one, if that happens for like 3 months straight, guess what we can do? I can do this full time. Guess what? I moved to Austin. I'm doing this full time. Networking, meeting with people, getting on bigger and bigger guests, doing this until it gets bigger and bigger. Then we're putting artists onto the map. Then we're getting to work with producers. We're getting really good stuff going on. Then we're doing TikToks. Then we're doing things. Then we're having live shows. Then we're getting comedians to open and to do jokes between the bands, the live shows. Let's say half of them are like, couple 100,000 followers on Instagram. Guess what? Every single band who now opens or plays has 100,000 people, or at least 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people who are all going to check them out within that first week. Boom. You post a clip, you have the bands on a podcast with the comedian. Boom. Think about this stuff. Do you realize this? Do you realize what's going to happen? We're going to bring back rock. We're going to bring back rock, even if it's like that first year. You might say it's slower. And this is me just not even coming up with the best ideas off the top of my head. This is me just going. This is me just going. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It might not happen in a year. It might not happen in 2. It might not happen in 5. But it's going to happen in 10. It's going to happen in 12. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Rock is 12 years behind comedy. But I'm one step ahead.